pulling record-high viewership, ticket prices, and drawing in new fans. That's now par for the course, or should I say court, for women's NCAA Division I basketball. This season's success comes in spite of long-time neglect from the association, which has put a lot more time, money, and attention into the men's teams. GBH's Callie Crossley has been following along and cheering them on. She joined me yesterday to discuss. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
So, suddenly women's basketball is the hottest sport in America. What's going on?
Women's college basketball specifically, March Madness specifically. March Madness is a particular cultural phenomenon. I am not a sports person, so somewhere millions of people are out there looking at this laughing that I'm having this discussion with you. But it's become such a big deal that even those of us who are on the periphery, who barely pay attention and don't watch the games, but I watch all the highlights, are really into it. It's the coverage, it's the personalities, it's the whole Cinderella possibility of it, and it's the fact that finally we're at a point where women's sports are getting the due, at least in audience, and some money, not where they should be yet, you know.
So, I mean, sports might be the last communal experience we have in America now, but it's always been men's sports up until now, with the exception of the national women's soccer team for the World Cup, right? So that was the big. But suddenly, women's basketball has a celebrity. Catilin Clark seems to be the biggest celebrity in college sports right now. Is this a Catilin Clark phenomenon, or does it go beyond that?
No. So remember now, with March Madness specifically, because I want to just keep in that arena, I do think some has spilled over to the WNBA, but with March Madness specifically, that was 1939 for, you know, when it started for men, 1982 for women. So there was a lot of catch up. And all of this blanket TV coverage was what? On men's teams. So it's just been recently that somebody woke up and said, oh, people are interested in watching the games for the women. Also, the intensity of the competition between the women's teams has brought a lot of other attention. And all of those personalities, the coaches are fabulous. I mean, who can't watch Kim Mulkey from LSU with the pink outfits and the boa constrictors and whatever she's wearing all the time, and she herself being a player? How about Don Staley? You know, 3.2 contract with the South Carolina Gamecocks. I mean, they're playing for a death match situation. There's a lot to watch and follow, and the talent is great. So yes, Catilin Clark has drawn more people to it because she's broken some impressive records.
So, I mean, and this is reflected in the economics, right? So right now we know that the cheapest ticket for the 2024 Women's Championship game is currently $320. That's 38% more expensive than the $257 price for the cheapest men's ticket.
Okay.
That would have been, I mean, that would have been mind-blowing 10 years ago, the idea that differential would go in that way. And this is not a story of interest in the men's game decreasing.
No.
This is a story of interest in the women's game increasing.
Which is what you're supposed to do. The pie is supposed to get bigger. That's all. You know, everybody has a piece of it. I think it's important to note that $1 billion more is going to be spent on sports betting this go round. That's how huge it's gotten, because 40 states now have legal gambling because of that Supreme Court overturning that rule in 2018. So now we have the highest ticket prices for Final Four for the women. Okay, so that says a lot. 50% more in general. I mean, the money is. There's so much money, and not to mention that the players themselves, you mentioned Catilin Clark, have an opportunity to use their images now and make a profit off of it. So she's got Gatorade, State Farm to begin with. She's not even in the WNBA, and so many of the other players do as well.
I am also happy to license my name and image for anyone who wants it. But in fact, strikingly, even sort of almost traditional men's commentators have acknowledged that this is real. Yeah, finally. Yeah. This is something real. I mean, Skip Bayless has said that he's more interested in the women's tournament than the men's tournament, right? And Stephen A. Smith, of all people, has said that the women are more interesting than the men. I mean, I could have lost some of that $1 billion betting that those two would never say something like that.
I know, and I think it's so interesting because the language of March Madness is really quite feminine. We're talking about going to the big dance, having your dance card punch, dancing, the glass slipper for Cinderella. I mean, come on. It's fascinating to me that with that kind of language, it's always been focused on the men. But this time, the Cinderellas are with the glass slippers are on the right foot, and that's the distaff side.
Do you think this is going to last?
Yes. Yes, you can only get more into because the talent has always been there. They just haven't had the platforms to do it. Hey, Don Staley has a $3.2 million contract. That's finally getting into a place where women's coaches should be in terms of talent, of the kind of coaching they're doing for the talented players like a Catilin, like an Angel Reese at LSU, like all the entire Gamecocks, South Carolina, the Don Staley coaches. So I think when we see more of that, and particularly the blanket TV coverage, and now we're talking about the betting, absolutely.
And do you think this is going to grow beyond March Madness?
And, that's interesting because I think some of it for the women is now going over to WNBA popularity. We've seen some of that in the last years, but I want that to just boost up to the level of intensity. Some part of March Madness has to do with it's very confined. You've got those 68 teams. They go right down to the Sweet 16, which we know is going to start now today and tomorrow, today for the men's and tomorrow for the women's. And then after that, down to the Elite Eight and then the Final Four. So it's so fast, whereas, obviously the other seasons, the professional basketball take longer. So I think that the buildup is there. I think we've seen the interest, and I am expecting it to not only maintain, but just to go up like 3 or 4 times folds, like the money is.
So the most important question is, how is your bracket doing?
Oh, I don't do brackets. See, I told you, I'm on the periphery of the cultural phenomenon, which makes it a huge cultural phenomenon. For those of us who not do the brackets, I don't watch the games. I watch the highlights. I am just into it in the moments, in the way that I am. That says something about how this particular phenomenon has embedded itself in people far beyond those who are just sports fanatics.
Well, it'll be an exciting big dance for the rest of March, and we look forward to seeing the rest of it.
As Bill Rafferty says, send it in, Jerome.
Callie Crossley, thanks so much for joining us today.